Hi there, my name is Caitlin. I am from grassfedgirl.com, and today we're going to be talking about how I had a natural birth planned, but it didn't go quite like that. So stay tuned to see what happened. If you don't know much about me, I am a holistic nutrition consultant. I used to be a personal trainer for 7 years, and then I went to school for nutrition, holistic nutrition, because my health went downhill. I got Hashimoto's disease, and I tried to figure out what I could do to support myself holistically. So that is my mission, and I want to share everything I've learned over the past 10 years with you. So that's what these videos are about: thyroid, holistic health, natural living, all that kind of stuff. So of course, lots of steak in between. So I have been wanting to get pregnant and have a baby for many, many years. It didn't really work out like that, but I'll make another video about the pre-birth and all that, but I will today be talking about my birth. So since I am over 35, I had a lot of testing. They do a lot of testing when you're over 35, and I had a midwife, and she was very wonderful. I went to kind of a practice of midwives, so you see a different one every time. It's a large place, but they all kind of share the same mentality, which is less intervention unless it's absolutely necessary. So, and they're more on the natural side of everything, and so you really don't have to ask for much because they're probably not going to do most things. They don't do forceps. They don't do epidurals. I mean, they just don't do anything unless you really have to have it. And at that point, they may call in another doctor to help because it might be medically necessary. So anyway, they try to let the birth progress and not speed it along with drugs and things like that. That's what a midwife is all about. So I had a midwife. I also had a doula that was a separate doula that I hired and took with me because I wanted somebody there who would help me make decisions along the way. She was also a midwife, but she wasn't serving in that capacity for me. So she was very educated on both sides of the medical side, the conventional side, and also the side where she knows all the holistic options that I wanted and intended. So she was helping me every step of the way. Of course, also she helped me with the labor. So anyway, I had a lot of ultrasounds. I had a lot of things leading up to the birth. I had regular monitoring constantly. I went to the doctor every month, and then towards the end, I went to the doctor every week, and I had ultrasounds. So they were pushing me towards the end to get a induction, and I really didn't want to because I just felt like that would, kind of be artificial. I wanted my body's natural processes to go into effect. I didn't want to be in labor artificially. Also heard it hurt more, so I wasn't too excited about that. And I also didn't want the baby to be premature. I wanted it to just be, fully 40 weeks and all that. So I just kind of resisted that, and I waited around, and I did do ultrasounds every week. So they checked the baby was okay and that everything was going well. They have to make sure your placenta is really healthy and everything. So I felt confident that every week I was checking and everything was good. And I got an 8 out of 8 on every ultrasound. And I didn't have any complications other than being on the older side. Nothing else was wrong with me. I didn't have gestational diabetes. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have anything wrong with me. So I felt confident in pursuing my natural birth plan. So since I am over 35, I had a lot of testing. They do a lot of testing when you're over 35. And I had a midwife, and she was very wonderful. I went to kind of a practice of midwives, so you see a different one every time. It's a large place, but they all kind of share the same mentality, which is less intervention unless it's absolutely necessary. So, and they're more on the natural side of everything, and so you really don't have to ask for much because they're probably not going to do most things. They don't do forceps. They don't do epidurals. I mean, they just don't do anything unless you really have to have it. And at that point, they may call in another doctor to help because it might be medically necessary. So anyway, they try to let the birth progress and not speed it along with drugs and things like that. That's what a midwife is all about. So I had a midwife. I also had a doula that was a separate doula that I hired and took with me because I wanted somebody there who would help me make decisions along the way. She was also a midwife, but she wasn't serving in that capacity for me. So she was very educated on both sides of the medical side, the conventional side, and also the side where she knows all the holistic options that I wanted and intended. So she was helping me every step of the way. Of course, also she helped me with the labor. So anyway, I had a lot of ultrasounds. I had a lot of things leading up to the birth. I had regular monitoring constantly. I went to the doctor every month, and then towards the end, I went to the doctor every week, and I had ultrasounds. So they were pushing me towards the end to get a induction, and I really didn't want to because I just felt like that would, kind of be artificial. I wanted my body's natural processes to go into effect. I didn't want to be in labor artificially. Also, I heard it hurt more, so I wasn't too excited about that. And I also didn't want the baby to be premature. I wanted it to just be, fully 40 weeks and all that. So I just kind of resisted that, and I waited around, and I did do ultrasounds every week. So they checked the baby was okay and that everything was going well. They have to make sure your placenta is really healthy and everything. So I felt confident that every week I was checking and everything was good. And I got an 8 out of 8 on every ultrasound. And I didn't have any complications other than being on the older side. Nothing else was wrong with me. I didn't have gestational diabetes. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have anything wrong with me. So I felt confident in pursuing my natural birth plan. I did gain a lot of weight, about 50 pounds, but I wasn't too worried about it because all of my markers were good. I wasn't eating junk. I was eating very, very clean, very high fat, on the low carb side of things. So I wasn't too worried about that. And then we got up to 40 weeks and, again, they were pushing me for the induction. I said no. I was just kind of dragging my feet on that. And then one day I started having really bad cramps in the morning. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm having these cramps. I called the doctor. They said, come and look at us. And when I say doctor, I always mean midwife, but it's just easier to say doctor. So I went down to their office and they checked me out. They said I wasn't dilated, hardly at all. So just kind of like they said, if I went to the hospital, they would probably try to induce me. So if I wanted to just go back home, that would be the best thing. So I did. My husband drove me back home and I just started having labor, basically cramps and bad contractions all day. So they were pretty strong. I remember my stepmom came over and we went on a walk and I was like, having bad contractions through the walk. And then I was sitting on the porch and I was like having really bad contractions. It's like really, really bad cramp. So I was kind of confused with the word contraction because I had terrible cramps in high school and stuff and it was like that, but it was stronger. It was like you had to sit still kind of and like breathe, really breathe. So they were some new experience for me. And then by about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, they were pretty bad. So every time I would have one, I would have to sit down and they were getting closer, maybe 3 minutes apart, something like that. So, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not good with times and all that stuff, but I'll just try to tell you as much as I can remember. So, and again, it was only 8 weeks. So I wanted to make this video right away so I can remember as much as possible. So then we were just trying to watch TV or whatever. I was doing some stretches in the living room. I kept texting my doula all day. That's another thing about a doula. They can help you, tell you when to go to the hospital. And I did not want to do a natural home birth because because of being older and it was my first baby and everything. So I didn't know what the heck I was doing and I didn't want to have complications and be transferred. And that happened to my sister. So I did not want to have that. I wanted to start wherever I started having the birth. I wanted to finish having the birth. So at the hospital, because I wanted to be close to the hospital if anything went wrong, or in the hospital. I didn't want to be home and then have to drive to the hospital. So anyway, we were just kind of watching TV in between these contractions and I was doing some stretches. My doula had said do some stretches where you kind of do a lunge onto the couch. And I did that a couple of times. And on like the third one, my water broke all over the floor. It was amazing. It was just like a movie. So I was pretty just blown away because I was like, that really happens. I didn't know. I thought I would just be one of those people that didn't have like that kind of reaction. So when that happened, I was like, okay, it's really happening now. It's not just, pain, my imagination, and it's not just pain. Our bags were actually already in the car from when we went to the doctor in the morning. So we just hauled butt and we got in the car and we went all the way down to the hospital, about 15 minutes away. And I'm glad I stayed home all day because if I'd gone to the hospital that morning, they would have induced me. But I had kind of a peaceful day at home, just doing the things and eating and cooking and everything. So I'm glad that I didn't go on to the hospital at that point in the morning when I thought maybe I should. But then we went there. My husband was funny. Like, I was like, don't drive too fast because, there's no point in getting an accident. And then we got to the hospital and they have valet parking. So he pulled up in the valet parking and they said, oh, you can come back later for your car. That's what they told him. And they gave me a chair, a wheelchair. And I was glad because I did not want, I think I had like water on my pants. So I really wanted to sit down and cover that up. So, and I was kind of unsteady. So I was glad my husband drove me up to the 4th floor, where the OB triage, and it was funny because he kept like hitting my feet or the metal things of the wheelchair on like the sides of the wall and stuff, and it was kind of funny. But anyway, we got up there and we just left our bags and everything in the car. They said we can come back later, and we got up there and they were looking at us like why. They didn't know who we were, even though they did have us in the computer because I had pre-registered everything. And we actually had an appointment just in case for induction on Sunday, but I really didn't want to, and this was on a Friday. So I was like, my stuff should already be in the computer. And then finally they were like, oh yeah, you're in the computer. But the girl was just staring at us like, why are you here? And it was kind of like, why not? Where should we be? And they were asking down at the valet, they were like, should you go to the emergency room? And we were like, why would we go to the emergency room? We already kind of have an appointment, sort of. Anyway, so we finally got somebody who knew what was going on to take us to a room. And she was like, I'm going to check if you're really in labor. So I was like, okay, I'll see if I'm kind of laughing because I was so in labor that I was like sweating and everything. So, and contractions were really strong. And when she saw me have a contraction, she was like, oh my gosh. And then she took my blood pressure and everything. And then, about right after she walked out of the room for a second, then she gave me this bag and I just threw up all in the bag. And which I'm not a big throw up person. So it was weird. I didn't know that was like a sign of labor. And she was like, oh yeah, you're in labor. So they got me a room, like a more permanent room. And we went over to that other room. And then my doula came. I text her, please come now. I'm ready now. Please come. And so all night, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but I was in labor really strongly. Really bad. It was horrible. Like, the pain, I have never felt pain like that. It was unreal. So the contractions were right on top of each other. My husband was holding my hand. I was moving around. The one thing you want to make sure of when you go to labor is don't have, I had a mobile monitor, I guess. So you don't want to be tied down to the bed. So I was moving around to the bathroom. I had a ball. Just anything that felt comfortable, and really the only thing that felt comfortable was me like sitting like as if I was on the toilet. So anything that mimicked that feeling, I liked. I did not like laying down. So don't lay down. Unless you like that, because it does not feel good, especially when something is like trying to come out of you. So definitely do not just lay down or be confined to the bed. If you can arrange that beforehand. You can also not get an IV. I think I did let them because I don't know. I had read that you're not supposed to let them, but I just let them. And it turned out for the best that I did let them, but it wasn't a big deal. Just, I mean, they put the little thing in. You don't actually have anything going in, but they just put it in there ahead of time so that if they do need to give you something, they have it already in. And so that's what they put on my hand. That wasn't a big deal. But the midwife was there and they were amazing. All the nurses were amazing. It seemed like they were really cheerleaders for me. They wanted me to have a natural birth. They were just amazing. And the good thing about the midwife, every 12 hours you get a brand new fresh one. So they don't stay, like a home birth midwife will stay with you for like 24 hours or 2 days or 3 days or whatever. But in the hospital, they have a fresh one all the time. So that's cool. And these midwives were just amazing. Like they just were the kind of people like I would be friends with or hang out with. So I just like having them there. They were just mature, very on the ball, just thoughtful. They talked about things you wanted to talk about. I mean, they were just trying so hard. And of course, my doula is somebody I bonded with before. Your doula should come to your house and talk to you, meet you before a couple of times so that you know all about them and everything. And so you kind of have this connection. And she was also really helpful for my husband, telling him what was going on and stuff like that. They kind of became buddies in the room. So there was, and it was also during COVID, so I couldn't have any other family there. So it's just my husband and the doula. If I hadn't have hired the doula, I would have only had my husband. So I'm really glad I did have the doula. And she was also texting with my parents and my sister to tell them what was going on. So that was just wonderful to have that as well. And anyway, you also can't eat when you're in there. So, but you don't think about eating at all. I was mad. I thought about that I would be mad, but you don't think about eating. You don't feel well. You don't feel right. So eating is the last thing on your mind. I did eat, I think, ice chips. I brought a case of water with me, so I would drink my water. I had my electrolyte drink. This is my electrolyte drink that I love. So I brought that with me, and I put it in my water bottle, and that was really helpful. You can get that down in the description box. I discount on that. And so it was just the most horrible pain of my life. And it lasted all the way till about 5 or 6 in the morning. And I really thought, we all thought it was coming to an end. We were going to have a baby here soon. And I'll tell you what happened next. Look who's awake. I didn't get to finish my story before he woke up. So I will try to finish it now. So in the morning, about 6 or 5 or something like that, they thought that the baby was going to come out, but it just kept stalling and stalling. And they were also very concerned that my heart rate was very high, and they were concerned that I was just under too much stress. So they said that I could get an epidural and that would probably bring down my heart rate. And I had been pushing for so long, and I had been struggling for so long at that point. I was like, okay, if you think that's going to help, then fine, whatever. I was just so tired. And so that is all started 7 o'clock at night, really started early that day, the Friday. So now it was Saturday morning, and they brought in the epidural people, and I had the epidural, and it lasted for 3 more hours, and I could not feel a thing. So I didn't even know if I was really pushing or not, because compared to the pain of before when I was actually pushing, or when I was pushing manually, that I couldn't feel anything. So I just said, okay, well, whatever you say. They said I was pushing, so fine. I didn't feel anything. So I was kind of glad that I hadn't had the epidural before that, because, I mean, how would you know if you were actually pushing or not? I mean, I felt literally nothing. So it kind of felt like a cartoon or something to go from that horrible pain to the epidural. And it didn't feel effective at all. And then finally they said, well, since it's not moving along, we're really afraid that you're going to have a hemorrhage because you've been in labor for so long. And, we're kind of worried about the baby at this point. And by then I was just so tired. So now it was about 11 or 12, and I was just so tired, and I just wanted the baby out, and just to know that he was in there and that he was wanting to come out, but they said his head was crooked and it was just stuck and he just wasn't progressing and nothing was going to change, they said. And I was starting to get scared because I thought I was done. By 6 in the morning, I thought I was done and nothing was happening. And now it was noon and he was still in there, just kind of stuck. And I just started getting scared and I just got really kind of mad and I just wanted him out and I just wanted this to be over with. And I was afraid that if I waited anymore or pushed anymore, that one of us would start to falter. One of us would start to show signs of falling apart, or whatever happens, like whatever the bad outcome could be. I was just afraid that the more I waited, that something bad would happen. So I just didn't want to wait anymore. And they said, well, would you consider a C-section? And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought this would happen. I never thought I would get to this point. And they said, just talk to the surgeon and see what you think. And I was like, all right, I guess I can talk to her. I didn't know it was a her. But then she came in and she was just like really, some people you just feel comfortable with them. And she just kind of looked like somebody who dropped off of Grey's Anatomy. Just really looked like a surgeon, I guess. And she was about probably my age and just, she just had a real professional look about her. And so I said, are you going to be the one doing the surgery? And she was like, yeah. And by then I was just so exhausted. I was just like, and she made me feel very comfortable. I was like, okay, let's just go. I want to see my baby. I want to be safe. I don't want either one of us to have, a crash cart in here or anything like that. So I said, let's just go. She said, yeah, we'll have your baby out in like 30 minutes. And I was like, awesome. I'm just done with this. I just didn't want anything bad to happen. And I felt like I had already tried everything I could. And so, they were all recommending that I go this route. And I felt like they had really given it their all too. All of the nurses had been so behind me all the way, just cheering me on, pushing me through every single contraction. And I just felt like this was the best choice at the time. And, I just didn't want to go anymore. And they said nothing was happening. So, and I know my husband was exhausted, of course. So we went down to the OR. There was probably like 10 people in there. And within, it felt like you snapped your fingers and the baby was out and he was just perfect. And they showed him to me and it was just a beautiful moment. And they did take him to the nursery, which actually one of the midwives that I had bonded with over the time, she went with them and they said that they would make sure that my wishes were complied with. I only wanted him to get the vitamin K shot because the other things just didn't seem necessary to me. So she said she would make sure of that. And I felt good about that. They didn't, because of COVID, there was a lot of weird things. You couldn't just do everything the way you wanted to. So you just kind of sucked it up. And then she said, we'll bring him right back to the room. And so by the time I got back to the room, the baby was there. So the C-section, I felt absolutely nothing. It was just completely painless. At that point, later on, got pretty bad, but it was so quick. You were just in and out of there. Everyone was super nice, friendly. It was like a well-oiled machine, almost like one of those like brand new car washes. It felt like it was just like boom, 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 boom. They just do everything, and then you're out of there, back in the room. And when we got back there, the baby was there. They put him on me. We had like two hours or maybe 3 hours where we just played with the baby, looked at the baby. It was on our chest I was doing the skin to skin. It was just wonderful. It didn't feel rushed or anything. We had a great time. And of course we were exhausted, but you're kind of like high on adrenaline then. And my doula went home, of course. She was so tired. And then they transferred us to our real room. That was our room where we were going to stay for 2 or 3 nights. And that night I was just so freaking exhausted. And every second they have people come in the room checking on you. So you never really get much peace. And then it's funny, like about 9 o'clock that night, 8 o'clock, my husband just passed out. They have this little like weird kind of recliner thing that goes into a bed. And he just passed out on there. And then I was there left with this baby, and I still had an IV and I had a catheter. So I was completely like stuck in the bed. I couldn't even walk. You can't walk. And so I was like, how am I supposed to care for this baby all night? And they were like, well, you can send him to the nursery. And I was like, oh, okay, that'd be great. Because I felt like I was literally going to drop him. I mean, I was so weak and so tired. So I just sent him to the nursery, and I felt like that was the safest thing at that point. All the nurses, everybody was amazing. We had people coming in our room all the time. Finally, that next morning, I made it through that night. I slept pretty good without the baby. Then the next morning, people just kept coming in the room all the time. They took out my arm thing, the IV, so that was great. So I could move around a little better, and I started to be able to walk. And they wanted me to pee like 3 times so that I could get out the catheter. So I had to do that. That might have been the next day, but that's a challenge you have to overcome. There's a lot of little milestones you have to hit before they'll let you leave the hospital. So we were in a hurry to hit all those, also for the baby. At one point, the baby's breathing was a little bit labored or too fast or something, and they wanted to make sure that was worked out. So, but it was totally fine because he was right on that border. And then he was just super healthy. He was 9 pounds, 1 ounce, 1.5 ounces. So that he was just really long, 21 inches. And, that might have been, he was big on the big side. So that might have been another reason he couldn't come out. I don't know. But we were both super, super healthy. We had no problems. One of the nurses really pushed me to breastfeed. And I mean, I was going to breastfeed anyway, but she was like really helping me. She made me pump to get my colostrum going. And he ate the colostrum. He had no problems. It was kind of painful, kind of awkward, but he was into it. So, but I'm glad that nurse really pushed me to do the colostrum and get my milk going. So definitely do that if you're in the hospital. Just go ahead and get hooked up to that pump and just go for it, because you really need that milk to get everything going. And we had lactation consultants also come, and they were very helpful too. So if you want to breastfeed, definitely you should breastfeed, I think. Give it your best shot, because it's super, super nutritious for your baby. And, things happen. I know not everyone can, but definitely try. And really try, because I had to try for like a whole month before it really set in, and now it's getting a lot easier before. So give it, it's gonna be an effort, and it's gonna be painful for sure. But I'll make another video. I'll make another video about breastfeeding. Anyway, so no shame if you end up sending your baby to the nursery. They assured me they weren't going to do anything to him, like no weird shots or anything like that without my permission. So I just had to believe them, because I was so exhausted. I just couldn't care for him myself. And I almost wish we had stayed another day. We stayed 3 nights in the hospital, but I almost wish we had stayed one more day, because going home was a huge rude awakening, because there's nobody there to help you. But anyway, I'll talk about that in my next video about the breastfeeding. And we had a weird experience with it. Food was pretty bad. You had to call in. It was very antiquated. You call in and order. But I just ordered everything on the menu that had protein. And I found they had some hamburgers. They had chicken breast. They had eggs. They had omelets. They had whole milk. They had a cottage cheese. So those were all things. I have that on my Instagram. I showed all the food that I ate in the hospital. So if you're not subscribed to my Instagram, or, following me on Instagram, I put all my posts there every day. So I put my food over there, and it was pretty abysmal. But I did one day, I had pot roast, and like I said, omelets and burgers. And my husband walked outside because it's downtown, so he walked to like the Chipotle and he went to like a kebab place and stuff. But my food was kind of included, so I just thought, well, if I can get full, then I will. If I'm still hungry, he can go get me something else. But I just want to kind of see. It was like a challenge. He had to go down to one of the cafeterias and get me some butter because they would not bring me butter on my tray. They brought me some Promise, something like that, some kind of, fake butter. So he had to go down and get me some real butter. But otherwise, they did have some protein options and I made it work. But it was kind of sad to see what people, if they didn't know better, that they wouldn't have much options. So hopefully things will change in the future, but we'll see. And let's see what else happened. Like I said, take advantage of lactation consultants. If the nurses are there to help you, I didn't have any trouble asking them for help. Change my, anything they would do for me, I would take it. And that's the biggest thing. Take help, because I had not planned on having C-section at all. And, I didn't know that I was going to be immobile. And so, that was a real kind of, it was hard for me to take that I was, you are so freaking sore. You cannot get out of the bed. It takes you a long time to get out of the bed. It's very painful just to walk around. I did walk around the floor. Again, it was weird for COVID. You had to wear a mask outside your room. Thank goodness I didn't have to wear a mask in the room. But I walked a few times around the floor and down to the coffee shop and stuff like that. I mean, it was all within. I couldn't leave the hospital, but within the hospital, it is good to get up and move around. I think that was the second day, maybe not the first day. And then on the third day, they said we were good. We could check out. So we were glad. We had a nice room. It had a lot of light, a nice window over kind of this historic area. But we were ready to go home and have our own beds and our own bathroom and everything. But, and I did take a shower there. That's one thing. They wouldn't let you take a shower until you got your catheter out. So I was really glad to take a shower because I had been sweating and so much during the labor, and you are so dirty after that. So I was really glad that they let me take a shower. And, but again, it's nothing like home. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I can think of right now. I'll add on to this if I can think of some more, but the third day, so we went to the hospital on Friday night and we went home on Monday morning, which was actually Labor Day. So it was hard to get my prescriptions. I had a lot of pain medicine that they had prescriptions, so it was hard to get my prescriptions on a holiday. Definitely consider having like some help when you get home. Get your mom to come or get a night nurse or something, because when you have a C-section, you cannot move. And it is really hard to get off a bed or a chair. So consider having that help when you get home, because, I mean, my husband helped me a ton, but it was just brutal. So I will talk more about that next time. So the main thing is that we are happy, we are healthy, and we made it through, even though we were scared and everything. All right, so I hope you like this video.